Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on today's Your Finance, Your Future during COVID-19 Charla. We will be giving a couple more minutes for folks to join us before we get started. In the meantime, I would like to go over a couple housekeeping rules to keep the charla as smooth as possible. We have a great lineup of speakers who will have 5-minute back-to-back presentations. We will also be having a Q&A session at the end of the charla. Please make sure to submit your questions in the Q&A window found at the bottom. Feel free to share any comments under chat icon and make sure it is set for both panelists and attendees. That way everyone can view it and join the conversation. For those of you just joining us, we went over the housekeeping rules and we'll add them under the chat for your review. I would now like to introduce co-founder of East Los Capital, investor and chief financial officer at Sabio, and chairperson of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, Emmanuel Pleitez.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jessica. And I am here to, one, welcome everyone, especially because this is in the financial services space. That's more of my background. So aside from being the chairman of Hispanic Heritage Foundation, I'm a private equity investor, as Jessica mentioned, through East Los Capital, and thinking a lot about finances. And I've sat in different seats in the financial services space. I've started my career at Goldman Sachs on Wall Street, have worked in the U.S. Treasury and the White House under the Obama administration, working on the economic recovery and just kind of financial policy in general. And so I've can speak about this from different vantage points, and I'm just excited to kind of hear all the different stories, presenters, and talk about how everyone else is thinking about their finances, their future, and quite frankly, collectively as a community, our finances, our future, especially during this COVID-19 environment, which is affecting all of us. Some of us obviously more than others, especially if we ourselves have been contracted with COVID-19, or our family members or our loved ones. It's impacting us in different ways, or even if it's just plainly the fact that we're trying to keep a job while also learning how to be a homeschool teacher. That's a lot of us are having to deal with that, and realizing that maybe the income from our job isn't going to be the same going forward, or at least in the next 6 to 9 months. So all of that is affecting us, but we're all survivors. We've built this country, helped build this country through our labor and investing as well. So we're going to be able to get out of this, and hopefully there's while everyone shares their story, there's also a sign of hope, and the fact that our charlas here allow us to be able to share these stories, help ourselves with our mental health as well, and think about how the future is going to look, and how we can support each other in that future. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce one of our board members, Monika Mantilla, who's not just a board member for HHF, but she also has a long history of community work. I think right now still chairs the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and is just a longtime dear friend. She was also an honoree of the Hispanic Heritage Awards in the past. So Monika is a decorated business person, but more than that, a committed community leader. And so I'm gonna hand it off to Monika Mantilla, who will be our first speaker for this charla about finance.
Thank
Monika.
you, my friend. Thank you. Hoping everyone is well and safe. I live near New York, so the stories we've been hearing here are very sad. The doctors and the nurses with their faces, in just tremendous difficulty. I think what we're living is at every level making us feel enormously vulnerable, uncertain. But I also think that in these times of despair and uncertainty is where also the human strength and the collaborative power of human beings and of our community can come through and should come through and is coming through. I serve on the board of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation and also of the Stanford Latino Entrepreneurship Initiative, and the USHCC, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the Foundation. And I mention these entities because I think that they all are a fabric of support. They all crystallize a voice of our community. We are having conversations with, the stakeholders, whether it's White House or the different agencies or the legislators, advocating for our businesses, for our families. I think we are in a historical moment where we have fantastic leaders and fantastic business owners and professionals and workers around the country that need to be supported. And thank God we live in a country where the support systems have been put out there. Some of the initiatives, like the PPP initiative, has unfortunately not gotten to everywhere yet, and the money's out. And there's a big plea now for the legislative to get out the next batch so that more of our business owners can get that money. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense, right, of there's a great leadership advocating for the community. There was just a town hall today with Janet Murguia and a fabulous doctor advocating for and there's a research paper that came out, and I can maybe post it here in the chat for all of you to see about what the effect of COVID is having in the Hispanic community. My sense is that we have to continue to be together. We have to be advocates of our issues. We have to be architects of our own solutions. And finance is no different. I've always been an advocate of being architects of our own solutions, not to be in an island and work our solutions alone, because we are in an ecosystem and we need our partners, and we need all the large players and the mid-sized players and government to work with us. But I think that, 16 years ago, when I was invited by the US House of Representatives to talk about Hispanics in financial services, I remember thinking, okay, an important part of it is us as financial service users, right? Because we open accounts, we invest, we save, we need our banking institutions to transact. But then the other part, as important as being users, is being service providers, is being owners of our own architecture, having our own community banks and regional banks, and hopefully not too far away, national banks and CDFIs and private equity and private debt funds. I think that all this architecture of financial structure is necessary for us to be able to maximize our potential. And in these times of dire, necessity, and where there's going to be significant rebuilding happening in our country, I actually think this is a wonderful historical moment to redesign pieces of that architecture, where every one of our service providers, every one of our, we have the number 5 bank SBA lender in this country is a Latino bank. We have a number of CDFIs, we have a number of asset managers. And my invitation today is to think about being in financial services, because the reason I ended in financial services is because I always felt it's like the blood of our system. A system based on meritocracy, a system based in capitalism and opportunity for all, but understanding that whoever has the capital has the upper game. And so I think this is a consideration that all of us should do, not only as business owners. I think in our families, in our own planning, in our families' planning, in our community planning, financial architecture, financial planning, and building a culture of savings and investments is absolutely fundamental for us to continue to work on that, develop ourselves on that, teach ourselves on that every single day. And there is a huge opportunity for our community to utilize financial architecture to be able to address our direst needs, whether it's education or healthcare or, you know, having access to capital for our businesses. That's why I always talk about not access to capital, but access control and management of capital. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor of everything. Have the sense of community here with all of you. I feel blessed to be part of this community, and I wish everyone to be safe, to keep tranquility and inner peace, and to think that the best way to cheer ourselves up in this time of need is to cheer someone else up. So I would invite every one of you, think about ways in which you can be supportive to your community, to your local business owners. Be a volunteer in any of the initiatives that are happening. We're running with an initiative called Lend a Mano to be able to create a support system for the most vulnerable business owners, gathering dollars, whether it's $10 or 10 million, and doing a very quick credit-worthy but good, solid credit-worthy analysis and putting it in the hands of the most vulnerable business owners, from the tiny ones up to 2 million in revenue business owners. We're about to launch the initiative. It's the COVID initiative. It didn't exist a month ago, and it's now our biggest mission in life to put it together. You'll hear about it in a few days. It's called Lend a Mano, and it will be launched very soon, and hopefully we'll have many phenomenal sectors of our both public and private supporting us in this endeavor. I want to finish there with my best to all of you, my strength to all of you, and be optimistic about the future. We will rebuild together. We are here together. And todo lo mejor para todos ustedes y todas sus familias. Love you all. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much, Monika. And we're definitely looking forward to Lend a Mano. Thank you for all you're doing in our community and in the small business sector. I'll be remiss to not thank Ramiro Savaso, who heads the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for all you're doing and our community small business.
Yes, Ramiro has been doing a phenomenal job at USHEC. Thank you for bringing that up, as well as Mark Madrid. Big shout out to both of them, our great leaders of business owners that are advocating for our business owners. Yes, and for the local chambers, 200 and something around the country, and advocating for them and their financial strength as well. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you. And I would like now to introduce our next speaker, Jen Hemphill, who will be presenting on creating a plan B for your Dinero with ease. And I would like to also remind you all, if you can please state where you're calling in from, that would be helpful.
Hello, I am so excited to be here. As Jessica said, my name is Jen Hemphill. I am an accredited financial counselor. I call myself a money confidence mentor. And I also have a podcast called Her Dinero Matters. Now, we are in a time where our lives have been thrown upside down. We were living one thing almost a couple months ago, and now we're living a completely different world. And whether we lost an income or whether our income still stays the same, we all need a plan B. And a plan B will get us through these tough times. A plan B allows us to focus on the present rather than worry about the what ifs. Now, a plan B doesn't have to be hard. And I love, if you've listened to my podcast, I'm about keeping things simple. So with a plan B, you can keep it as simple with 3 Ps. So the 3 Ps are prioritize, plan, and patience. With prioritize, we need to prioritize where our money needs to go first. We're each in our household, our families, we each have different needs. And so we need to look at our household situation. What's important at this very moment to take care of you and your family? You and your family's needs need to go first. So of course, the normal, the food, the utilities. And I think nowadays we can all agree that the internet, the cell phones, that's how we're keeping connected. Can you imagine going through this pandemic back in before cell phones, back before TV, back before internet? How would we deal with that at this very moment in time? Now there is, I'll share the resource at the end. There is actually a free ebook. It's being made free now called Surviving Debt, where basically it helps you prioritize your expenses, your debts. So if you're in a situation where you have to choose one debt over another because you just can't fill the demands of paying both bills, it helps you prioritize which one you should take care of first and then worry about the other one later. So you really need to prioritize what's important to take care of you and your family. Then comes plan. We need to know our bare bones expenses. We need to understand how did our income change? Or maybe it stayed the same, or maybe we were fortunate. Maybe our income increased. So we need to know our bare bone expenses, and we need to look at that priority list that you created. Then you need to calculate what I call the current bottom line. So your current bottom line is essentially your bare bones expenses, or literally your priority list, or your income minus your bare bones expenses. So that's your bottom line. What does your bottom line tell you? It tells you what you have left, or maybe you don't have anything left. It tells you what your current situation is at this moment. So therefore, you know, do you need to tap in to your emergency savings? Do you need to ask for help? Sometimes at some point we need to set that pride aside and ask for help. Or what can we do to earn more money? We're in a gig economy where side hustles, I mean, I don't think that term existed 10, 15 years ago, or maybe it did, and I wasn't aware of it. So you need to really figure out what that bottom line is so you know how you can address that. So I did a podcast recently that I go into detail, and I'll share the link at the end. And the last one is patience. We can't control what's going on. So we need to focus on what you can control. I love Maya Angelou. And there's this quote where she says, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. So we need to have patience, and we need to give ourselves the grace, and just know that we're resilient and we can get through this. And we also need to surround ourselves with people that will uplift us, like this group. And then here's just the resources that I promised you in the next slide. That basically is the free ebook, and I created a pretty link, and the podcast episode on the Dinero podcast. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you so much for sharing the 3 Ps: prioritize, plan, and patience. Up next, we have Edgar Dreyer, who will be presenting on understanding your personal credit.
Hey guys, this is Edgar Dreyer. Just want to say first, all my thoughts and prayers with everybody out there. Hope everybody's staying safe and at home. I want to discuss something that somewhat gets overlooked over time, but it is important to really understand, and that's your credit. I think over the last downturn that we had in 2008, 2009, a lot of people went through a crisis of not really understanding how personal credit was being able to be built, and then how you can rebuild it if it was impacted by different situations you might have had, whether it be foreclosure, credit card debt, personal loans, and all the sorts. So I wanted to give an informational presentation of different, work that I've done with individuals and groups to try to really understand how they could develop and understand their personal credit. It might be introductory for many, but it might be a good refresher for some to really take advantage of. So if we proceed to the next slide. Right here, we talk about the importance of credit. This presentation will be available to you guys, I'm assuming, afterwards, so you guys can read it in detail. But the premise of credit is to really understand when you're going to apply for a mortgage, a loan, a credit card, and it may not be today, it may be next week, it may be next month, it may be in years from now. It's always important to make sure that you're on top of it. One of the biggest things that people that come up to me and ask me about credit is what is the reasoning? What is the math behind it? How do I get an understanding of it? What I've broken down here is to give you just a basic assessment of what categories look like. It's a score ranging from around 300 to 850, depending on the type of credit that you have developed over time. One of the biggest things that people may ask you to do when looking at your credit is to give you an assessment of how you've maintained it over time, and then also how you continue to develop it. If we go on to the next slide, you'll be able to see a little bit more as to how that score is broken down. I find that a lot of people try to get a better assessment on how it looks in terms of how it's broken down. You'll be able to see that not only will you understand the aspects of it, but you'll also be able to get an idea of where to access your personal credit. For example, creditkarma.com is one that I personally use. It's a great tool to be able to understand, how your credit is broken down, whether you have specific past due balances or whether you have credit cards that may or may not be yours. If you see here, the most important aspects have to do with payment history. So if you look at the payment history of your particular, credit, it has to do with whether or not you've been able to pay things on time. Also, the amounts due. That's a very important part of it. Credit always seems to people as something that it may be daunting given the fact that they don't know how to manage it. But if you understand credit and understand the basics behind it, you'll be able to manage it much easier. And then from there, you'll see that also the types of credit, which means credit cards, student loans, mortgages, and also length of credit, which means it's the time in which you've been able to obtain it. One of the most important things I think for young individuals also is that you should really start early in terms of getting a credit card, trying to figure out how you can access credit from the point in time that you've been able to apply. Many times this is as young as 18 years old. So from there, you'll be able to really understand of what are the things that are impacting your credit score and how you can manage it. If you go on to the next one. I just highlighted a couple text here that you guys can review. Good ways to build good credit over time have been only borrow what you can afford. So one of the biggest things that we look at in terms of accessing credit is being able to maintain it at a responsible rate. So if you are going to apply to a credit card, many times they give you a $5,000 limit, let's say. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can go up to $5,000 and use it and hope that that's what your balance is. The typical spending limit is always a percentage of that limit that they give you for credit cards. So many times you don't want to spend more than 30% to maintain a good credit over time. And to really maximize your credit score, they tell you to keep a balance of less than 10% of your credit limit. So it's always really important that you understand that. Also, in terms of using a small amount of your credit, it's very important that you understand that as you build credit and your credit score improves, your income will also improve as your career goes on. It's important that you understand that those tools will only get better over time. So having that accessibility of credit is always great, especially in times like these when you may need it. As it relates to the payments, it's really key that you understand that every month you have to make a payment towards your balances. I know that in times like these are difficult to try to maintain that credit card bill down, but making sure that you at least make the minimum payments is very important. And then like I said earlier, if you do have a balance, it's best to always attack it from the highest interest rate down. Typically, credit cards do have the highest interest rates, so you want to tackle those first, and then from there, try to work your way into other facilities if you can. If we go on to the next slide. I wanted to also add a couple steps here on how to repair bad credit. One of the biggest things also is when we get into a situation like we are now in the financial times that we are, we might fall into a point in time where we don't have an idea of what credit we want to tackle, whether it's a mortgage, whether it's a credit card, whether it's a car loan, and all the sort. So some of the tools that I've been able to use and advise for other people have been to first access your credit report at one of the sites that I mentioned earlier. It's very common that with very similar names, with backgrounds that are sometimes can get confused on credit reports, it's always important to constantly check your credit. So you have the opportunity to look at other, tools to make sure that that's the case. Always look at your past due balances to make sure that you take that on and tackle those from the biggest balances and bring them back down. And then one of the common things that I think people miss is if you do have a high interest rate credit card, there are other options for you to really get this opportunity to transfer to a 0% interest credit card. While it may be counterintuitive to take on that, it's much easier to transfer a balance from a high interest rate credit card to a 0 rate interest credit card. So I really recommend people look online to find offers that they can to transfer them. So this is a great, educational process. I hope you guys got a good learning opportunity here, and any questions you guys have, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Edgar, and thank you so much for your advice on building a good credit and how to repair a bad credit. I see we have a lot of questions whether the presentations are going to be available. I'm confirming that they are. So if you have any questions, keep asking them on the Q&A icon found at the bottom. I would like to present our next speaker. It's Fernando Barrueta. He will be presenting on commercial rent reduction.
Hi. As she said, my name is Fernando Barrueta, but they call me all kinds of other bad things. What my experience is recently with respect to this the coronavirus shock that's going on is that most landlords are willing to give you a rent reduction, even though you think you won't need it for 6 months. It's better to ask now than later. The typical thing that we see in the company I work with is that a tenant will ask for a rent reduction or a rent abatement for 3 months. I think it's about the average kind of thing. And in some cases, the landlord will agree to completely abate the rent for 3 months, or completely abate the rent and have you agree to repay it next year, over the next year or two, or pay it by increasing your lease term by that amount of time at the end of the lease. In some cases, the landlord will abate half the rent. That happened in one case with one of my Latino organizations. And that was, it's a small outfit, but it's $1,000 a month that they're saving. There are a lot of landlords that are very institutional, and that's much harder to deal with. But you need to ask. And the case can be basically that, everybody's hurting in this economy. And in many cases, you don't have access to your space. That's another issue that can be used as a justification. So just for you that have small businesses where you're paying rent, I would suggest you get in touch. Well, there's two ways to do it. You can call the building owner directly, or the building owner's broker, the one that you're renting from, or your own broker that represents you. That's one of the things we do. We help people and try to get them to get those rent reductions. But in any event, it's something that it's pretty easy money if you can get it, but you should try. There's, I'm on the board of another organization that just got a rent reduction that was, they didn't need it. They just asked for it and got it. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out with respect to this kind of money that's available out there, as you know, there's stuff that's available from your own government that, that like at DC here, they have some kind of fund that they put out and for people, for businesses, small businesses that need it. And you should try to apply for those. The third one is the PPP program, which ran out of money yesterday, I guess. And I guess they're going to put in another 250 billion. And I think the trick with that is go to a bank that wants your business. Some banks won't do it, like Capital One hasn't done it, and they won't. They're saying they're getting ready to do it, but so a lot of clients that are working with Capital One are going to other banks. You got to have a bank do it for you because they know how to do it, they know how to get it. That money is 1% money that you don't have to repay if you keep your staff. This is almost free money. It's and it's just a question of you're getting in line at the right time and having the right forms or whatever it is. So that's all I wanted to offer you. If you need some help with that sort of thing, call me. But there's lots of people you can call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fernando, and thank you so much for your advice on, having the folks call their building owner, broker, or anyone that represents them. Definitely helpful. And up next, I would like to present our speaker, who is Martin Sanchez, and will be presenting on mortgages.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martin Sanchez. I'm with Wells Fargo. I'm a Vice President Community Outreach Manager. And what that means is I work with our mortgage borrowers throughout the country who are facing financial challenges. And let me just, before I start really going into everything, I want to address how really weird and difficult these past several weeks have been for everybody, and even for me. Going out with a mask and being home nonstop with the family 24/7, as much as I love them. It's interesting, right? To get work done sometimes, but it's eating meals at home, and I just can't wait to get out to the restaurant again and go out to dinner. That's just something. But I know also that there are a lot of people suffering through this, both economically and also health-wise. So we know this is the right thing to do right now, and we're here to support each other. So that's part of the reason I'm here, is to make sure we'll support you at least with information. So thanks for your time today. Wells Fargo is committed to helping our customers facing challenges through this COVID-19 pandemic. We know that there have been challenges, there are financial challenges out there. Particular could be unemployment, underemployment. It could be caring for a family member who has health reasons and that, therefore you cannot go to work as much as you want to, you can't. It could be you yourself are sick. Whatever the situation may be, we want to make sure we're there for you. In particular for your mortgage. You have a $1,000, $2,000 mortgage coming in, and the last thing we want you to do is to have to worry about that. We want to make sure you can focus on your family members who are sick and be able to take care of yourself as well. So one way we're able to help you is through a payment suspension. So what we're doing is we're starting with a 90-day payment suspension on your home mortgage. During this time, we won't charge any late fees. We won't report any negative credit information to the credit bureau. So this is for 90 days. And after the 90 days is over, what you need to do is call us, let us know what's going on. If you need more time than 90 days, that's something we can offer. If it's still unaffordable, say everything gets better on day 91, and the economy is back to normal, which I don't know, probably not. But either way, if you need more time, we'll have that option. And also maybe even there's a situation where the mortgage wasn't affordable to you even before all this happened. And that's where also we can help you there and speak to you about your unique situation. So bottom line is to contact us. If you need help, contact us. I'd say a lot of people are confused initially if it was an automatic situation, say, oh, I live in this state and by the way, I forgot to mention, I live in Los Angeles in California. And, you know, we had a situation where, you know, we have a lot of, obviously around the country, but in the state, we have a lot of unemployment. And, you know, people thought it was an automatic situation where you just, if you live in the state of California, you would get a payment suspension automatically from the bank. You have to contact us. That's my biggest message to you is if you need help, please just let us know. And we'll be there for you. But so how do you do it essentially is the first thing is to call us, give us a phone call, and let us know. But also we know that the phone lines are a little bit backed up right now. To make it even easier for you, you go onto wellsfargo.com with online banking, and within 5 clicks, you can get to your request where you can request your payment suspension. You know, once this crisis is over, you know, we'll work with borrowers, we'll work with you, we'll work with your unique situations to make sure you get back on your feet, to get back to where you want to be financially. So again, just let us know. And also I realize a lot of people listening and watching today perhaps don't have a mortgage with Wells Fargo. And if you don't have a mortgage with Wells Fargo, my message to you is contact your mortgage servicer directly. Find out what options are available. Understand what can be done for you. But also I realize a lot of people on this webinar or Zoom call don't have mortgage either. Maybe you rent. And again, my message for that is speak to your landlord, find out what options are available. A lot of people work with you. How many times have we heard that you don't know unless you ask, right? And that's my message to you is go out and find out and ask. Don't be afraid to contact your bank to understand what options are available to you. That's not just for mortgage, for credit card, for your auto loan. We want to make sure you know all your options available to you. So have that conversation. And in closing, I'll say, you know, this has been a very difficult time for all of us, both in health and the economy. We'll get through this. We'll learn a lot through this process. We'll be even more prepared later than we were before this. Everything's going to be fine eventually. We're in this together. You know, as challenging as all this has been, I've also tried to see the silver lining. I've been able to spend more time with my family. I've been able to eat lunch at home, spend more time with my dog on the couch sometimes while doing work, exercising more, and even having lunch under a fort that my first grade daughter built in our living room. So that's been kind of cool. So trying to focus on that is the way I've been able to get through this. It's tough. It's not the most fun thing, but again, we'll get through this together. So thanks so much for your time. I'd like to see if you could put up my contact information on the screen. Let's see.
We will make sure to share your contact information, Martin, and a follow-up email.
Okay.
We will also be sharing this recording as well. So thank you so much for sharing your advice, and just to reiterate it to everyone, pick up the phone, call your banker and call your landlord and ask you know, how they can help you during these times. Thank you so much, Martin.
One more thing I'd like to say before I close. On that contact screen, it will say a really helpful website. It's wellsfargo.com/mortgage assist. You'll get all the questions answered for you that you may have. So wellsfargo.com/mortgage assist. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Martin. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ernie G, who will be presenting on Pivot to Prosper, how to make your business online and prosper.
So great to see everyone. Can you all hear me? Everyone, we're good?
We're good.
Beautiful. It's so nice to see Fern Barrueta. I haven't seen Fern in years. For those of you that don't know me, I'm an inspirational empowerment comedian, and I've been doing comedy for over 20 years. I was on tour with George Lopez and Gabriel Iglesias. I'm Not Fat, I'm Fluffy, all your favorite Latino comics. And about 15, 16 years ago, I started doing inspirational empowerment comedy. And Fern was the CEO of the Hispanic College Fund. And I became the national spokesperson for the Hispanic College Fund and traveled all over the country, inspiring thousands of Latinos to not just get into, but graduate from college. And so, as you can all assume, right when this stay-at-home order got put into effect, I lost over $20,000 in speaking engagements. So I went from a guy who had a full schedule with all kinds of college and high school graduations that I was going to speak at, and youth empowerment programs that I was going to speak at, and all of that just disappeared instantly. And rather than freak out, rather than kind of go into panic mode, I instantly went into everything happens for a reason mode. And I decided and chose to figure out what I needed to do to make my message available to more people. And so rather than freak out, I contacted a buddy of mine who is a psychologist. I've been thinking about doing a podcast for years, and I finally decided to put that together. And we've been going live on my Facebook page every night at 8 p.m. And it at first was just an opportunity just to be inspirational for people and provide them with some insight and some inspiration. And what's happened is we've been going live every night at 8 p.m. for an hour. It's Ernie G and Dr. E. He's a psychologist, a Latino psychologist. And we've been providing amazing support for all kinds of people. And I've been getting contacted by mental health agencies. I got contacted by LA First 5, who is now going to be funding me doing a live Facebook feed for all of their students. And then today I had my very first Zoom at noon epic empowerment for teenagers. And I just put it out on Facebook, and I had to close the registration because I had too many teenagers that wanted to be on a Zoom at noon call with Ernie G. And I was like, should I charge for that? Should I just do it, out of the kindness of my heart? And I'm like, excuse me, I lost $20,000 worth of gigs. I think a student would pay $5 or $10 to join. And I had it at $10 a student. And every parent was like, that's it? We'll pay more. We'll pay more to have my students hang out with you. And then the First 5 grant that I just applied for, one of my former students is now the director of that program. I have thousands of students all over the country that I've spoken at their high schools or at their colleges who are now professionals. And so this one just came to me. And I think I'm going to get a grant for about $25,000 to do the Facebook live feed that I've been doing for free. We're going to do it for this organization. And that's just one that came to me. This is not me marketing myself. This is not me putting my stuff out there. It's doing good work. And I know a lot of you are doing good work and not sure how to move forward. And what I say to all of you is that attitude is king. If you know in your heart that you have a valuable resource that people need, it is now time for us to pivot online and provide the leadership, the inspiration, the resources to many more people. I believe this is God's way of saying, Ernie, you've been doing great work in the colleges, you've been doing great work in the high schools, but more people need to see your message. More people need to be inspired by you. So now I'm going online, and the Facebook live feed is going to be available to more people. My Zoom at noon call is going to be available to more people. And I just hired a business consultant who's going to coach me on how to put a webinar that will be available all over the world that people can pay to watch. And so I had to pivot and shift what I thought was possible. I tell students all the time, if it is to be, it is up to me. Keep letting your light shine. And it's now time for Ernie G to take his own advice and take his career to a whole different level. I actually told my business coach, she charges like $6,000-$7,000 for her training. And I'm like, I don't know if I can afford that. And she says, I'll give you a discounted rate. And if you're not making 6 figures within 6 months, then you don't have to pay my full amount. And so I'm going to get coached by one of the top business coaches in the world on how to take my stuff online. So I just highly recommend to everybody that we pivot, put our stuff out there, and trust that the magic will happen if we have a good attitude. Was that 5 minutes? I think I nailed it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ernie G, for your advice. And definitely we'll make sure to keep our spirits positive and our attitude positive and attract that energy.
Yeah, and please, everybody add me on Instagram and Facebook. I'll put my information in the chat. Great seeing you guys. Antonio, Frank Carvajal, Fern, all of you. Martin Sanchez, who just spoke. So many familiar faces. I love you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Ernie. And again, reiterating that we will have all this information available to you all. And I would like now to welcome our next speaker, who is Mercedes Garcia, and will be presenting on using technology to manage your money better.
Hello, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Mercedes Garcia from MasterCard. And before I start, let me tell everybody I'm not here to give you credit cards. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people that still think that MasterCard is a credit card company. We are not, to the shock of many people. We are a technology company that develop the way that is safe and simple and smart and convenient, especially to do business together. We connect the merchants, the people, the businesses, and the government together to do business. So we do the technology and we help connect everybody. And those transactions, when you use your card, for example, that goes through our rails. But that doesn't mean that we give cards to people or that we connect merchants to accept payment cards. No, we don't do that. We don't have your information. We don't know how much you owe to credit cards. Which is another question that I get sometimes. So just wanted to add my 2 cents. Amazing information I have been hearing, but just want to bring awareness that sometimes, even though we're doing all the right things, like many of the amazing panelists have said, there may be other places where we are, saving and doing the right things in one hand, and then on the other hand, we are losing time and money. And that can be for not understanding payments technology or how to use technology to your benefit. So especially right now in this social distancing and all of these great measures to protect all of us, managing our money or doing things that are so simple to us are being so challenging. For example, buying our groceries, paying for gas, paying our bills is complicated. And just imagine unbanked people or people that are used to manage cash only, to do everything with cash. It's almost impossible, no? Like, for example, today, who can go to a check cashing center or who can go to a bank to withdraw money? And ATMs, I don't even want to think about how clean the ATMs are and having to go in person to buy things. When having a payment card, you can do everything online or, having online banking as well. And so just wanted to bring awareness that payments technology is like the fastest, simplest, safest, more convenient way of doing and managing your money today, and very safe. Passing cash from one hand to the other, don't even think about that. So I just wanted to share that with you, and also say that, the world is changing, and I see, and many of you might agree, that the world is becoming cashless. And I think everything that we're going through right now is proving that. Because if we're stuck at home, how can we order things? And how will we pay our bills or send money to other people or receive money from people if we don't use technology? And, I have been doing this education and managing the program for MasterCard called Master Your Card for many, many years. And I still hear people thinking like, oh, cash is king, or oh, cards, they are too complicated, and credit cards are terrible because they get you into debt. And I always ask people, did you go with your credit card to the mall, or did the card go by itself? So one of the panelists said, like, be responsible. Don't spend more than what you know you're going to be able to pay at the end of the month. And just use these tools and the technology for your benefit. You can save so much time and money by using the technology. As Edgar also was saying, credit cards are a good tool if you use them responsibly and correctly to build your credit and to grow your score as well. So just imagine if you need to ask for buy a car or ask for a loan or something. If you do everything in cash, how can you have a good credit score, right? So it's like technology is what it's really helping us and helping doing the right thing. So help us stay safe, save time, stay organized, and also feel more secure, because there's always behind the curtain, there's the banks that issue the cards are always taking care of us and protecting us. So there's a lot of information about payment cards and about all of this that I'm talking about in our website, masteryourcardusa.org. So please take the time to learn about that. Don't stay behind because we don't understand how things work. Remember, not all cards are credit. There's debit cards, reloadable prepaid cards, and even today, stimulus funds are coming into prepaid cards, right? If I don't have a bank account, I receive a stimulus in a check. Okay, now what do I do? I need to find a way to go out and cash the check, right? So even that is being enabled today. So people are using the reloadable prepaid cards to receive the funding. So just, remember that that's important as well. And visit our website when you have a chance. Again, masteryourcardusa.org. You will find all kinds of tools and videos and presentations, handouts, and also we're here to support you with this.
Thank you so much, Mercedes. We'll make sure to share the link with everyone and our recap email. And definitely we learned something new every day, and especially in the Charlas. MasterCard is a technology company. Got it. Thank you. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Patty Juarez, who will be presenting on resources to protect your finances during COVID pandemic.
Great. It's wonderful to be here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Patty Juarez, and I'm the National Director of Diverse Segments at Wells Fargo, which serves the needs of business owners throughout the country. I'm also the President of Latin Connection of Wells Fargo, our Latino employee resource group that represents over 45,000 Latinos that work for our company, making us the largest minority group at Wells Fargo. I don't know that a lot of people know that. My personal journey at Wells Fargo started 25 years ago, and I have had the good fortune of being able to do really fulfilling work, including starting the current group that I'm part of and 3 years ago. And taking care of my customers and helping them achieve their financial dreams continues to be my favorite part of the job. My Diverse Segments team develops and leads the strategies to support diverse-owned businesses such as Latinos, Asian Americans, African Americans, and women-owned businesses. Our priority is supporting Latino-owned businesses is clear. They're amongst the fastest growing segments in the country. We have a great diverse set of team members that are multilingual, bankers who provide the value that our clients and customers and prospects need, delivering our firm in the way that they feel comfortable, in Espanol or in English. Hispanic owned businesses are a key area of opportunity for us at Wells Fargo. There are over 4.3 million Hispanic owned businesses, which contribute over $700 billion to our American economy every year. Latino owned businesses, and especially Latina owned businesses, are growing at multiple times the rate of national averages of other segments. And lastly, but more also importantly, currently about a quarter of entrepreneurs in this country are Hispanic, compared to only about 10% a decade ago. So the business opportunity is undeniable. And at Wells Fargo, we recognize that Latino-owned businesses are a growing economic force, and we have a commitment to serve and grow your companies as you pursue your financial goals. I'm very fortunate that I get to do this work as my full-time job and make a positive impact in my community. I'm proud to see that we as Latinos are reaching for new heights. We continue to open more businesses than anyone else. We are earning more degrees than ever before, and we have enormous buying power. And we have been on a very exciting trajectory, and then the world changed because of COVID. I want to share maybe some of the tangible ways in which we can help you at Wells Fargo or your banks in trying to help you maintain your financial health during this crisis. We all know the devastating effects that unemployment and instability can cause in our lives. If we're unable to keep our financial commitments, our credit may deteriorate and preclude us from achieving many important milestones, such as buying a car, a home, financing a business. So what can we do to safeguard our credit from deteriorating? And earlier speaker, I already reviewed kind of what makes up your credit and your credit score. So I would say right now you need to take full advantage of the programs provided by your creditors. Be proactive about making payment arrangements to avoid any negative impact to your credit. Here at Wells, we're actually doing several things for our customers. We are suspending residential property foreclosures. We are offering fee waivers and payment deferrals and assistance to folks that contact us with a need. We have helped over 1 million consumer and small business customers by deferring over 1 million payments, representing $2.8 billion of principal and interest for loans. And we also provided waivers, 900,000 fee waivers that we have provided in the last few weeks to folks that contact us with needs. We're also participating in the SBA's PPP program, even though, as mentioned earlier, the funds have run out for the initial $350 billion. There is a supplemental coming, and it's being voted on and hopefully will be passed for another $250 billion. And so we will continue to accept new applications and prepare applications in our existing pipeline, and we'll submit them to the SBA if and when funds become available. As we all know, sometimes these things take time. But there is a huge demand for the PPP program, and only a fraction of businesses that qualify for it will end up getting the funding. And so I would encourage you to contact your bank to ensure that you're in line, because it is a first come, first served program. We're also here at Wells granting payment relief for small businesses up to 90 days if they need to skip a payment, any fee waivers that they might need, payment deferrals. We're here to help you on your lines of credit. We also participate in the disaster relief programs and other SBA programs, Main Street Lending, and others that are coming online to help small businesses. So I would say, my advice would be, talk to your creditors, set up payment arrangements. Don't let this pandemic get the best of your credit, of your financial health, and impact your credit and the ability for you to pursue your dreams down the road. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Patty. And thank you so much for your great advice in terms of asking our attendees to call their bankers and get more information as to what they could do now to not impact their future in a negative way. Up next, I would like to introduce Nicole Quiroga, who will be presenting on personal experience and the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Tony, for including me in this amazing group. So my name is Nicole Quiroga. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Just a small bit of background, we have 1,000 members, and many of them are on the phone with us day and night now to figure out how to navigate through these waters. Personally, well, as a chamber right now, for many of you that know the nonprofit world, it's most definitely a challenging time. Our fundraising takes place through our events, and many of them have been canceled. And so everything you can imagine, I guess income streams have basically come to a halt. So we acted in a way that we're advising our members to act. So that's great because we were able, and we are still acting and reacting by example for our members to follow. The one thing that we do to help our members right now, as I said, they're calling us, 24/7 to our cell phones, to the lines that we give them, is we matchmake individually with our team of consultants. We have a rather large team of consultants. And by the way, if anyone's interested in being a consultant, now that you can do it virtually, anyone that's interested in doing this, we are able to get a grant from the city, fortunately, and enabling us to, pay the consultants while a small fee, something for their troubles. So we're also letting people know that this is a possibility if people are looking to do some consulting work. We're also using the consultants to provide bilingual information for those who need it. And as we all know, sometimes these grants and these applications can get very tricky for English dominant folks. I can't imagine how it must be and how scary it must be for folks that don't dominate the English language. So we have that team of consultants. We're advocating to the council on a daily basis to find ways to increase and continue the influx of funding to other organizations in the city and in the region. One thing that I find interesting is that even though we all know we have a national picture of how Latino businesses are doing, for being the nation's capital and the region, we have a very small amount of information and research on where these businesses are located, whether or not they're minority or Hispanic, very limited information about where Hispanic businesses are located. So what we did recently, which I'm very happy about and happy to share the results when they come out, is we partnered with the Latino Center at the American University. And so we'll be doing a region-wide survey. It's taken some time and some thought to really get a sense of where everybody is, what are their issues, what do they need as Hispanic and minority-owned business in a very grassroots way. So once that comes up, we will go back to the council, continue with advocacy, and be able to share with them a clear picture of where our businesses are located and what their concerns really are. And then of course, we, as many of you have taken the role of educators, we took everything online. We are now virtually doing the webinars, and we find that we get quite a great number of attendees because things are changing so rapidly that everybody wants to know, what's happening, what's next, what's new. And so we've been able to move all of that information and our expertise online. And so these are the kinds of things that, I'll share with you that our members, the information that they're getting from us. We took the step of acting fast. Now we're a little bit further in the game, so we're telling them to act furious and apply, because really money is available in pockets of areas that they may not be aware of. Different municipalities, different counties, different foundations, different corporations are coming out with funding every day. So we ask them to please take a minute and really be informed and know what's going on. At that, simultaneously, of course, we're saying, so as it was said, look at your expenses, cut, freeze. All of a sudden you're gonna learn what you really need and what you really don't. Do you need all that fancy stuff? Do you need that much paper? Do you need that much space? There really is a positive impact, financial impact on the teleworking. And so we're asking businesses to really take a look at, as it was mentioned before, what are your real needs and what are your priorities? We're teaching them as part of our educational programs how to go virtual. We're teaching them how to do the gift cards, how to be relevant, how to do the coupons, how to pre-sell. There are people out there that realize that they can spend, to get the savings up front. And so we're trying to teach businesses how to do that and how to do it virtually, how to market that on social media, how to get the word out. Because now is the time that you want to make that marketing really strong so that when the economy comes back the way it will, your name is already branded out there. And so we're teaching folks to do that with the message, of course, of doing things now and changing things now and, being relevant and pivot, as was mentioned, that are going to be solid and in place for later. The one thing that, I recommend and we say as a chamber is now is your time and turn to dominate financial literacy. I am very, not shocked, but it's interesting how many business owners have an incredible grit and determination, but their level of financial literacy is limited to basics at best. And so we're telling them, investment principles, money management, take time to really learn the system so that when things get back, you're much stronger financially than you were before in terms of your literacy and your finances. We're encouraging people to take notes. Take notes at the end of every day at how your business changed today. What did you need? What did you lose? What did you gain? And have this mini, plan for if, God hopes never, but if it happens again, you really understand what it's like day to day what an emergency really looks like. What became your priority? Take notes, take notes, take notes, because, you know, as humans, it's great, but we tend to forget these moments, right? And so this is a time for you to really make a plan that is a day-to-day plan for you in the future to learn from, and then become better prepared. Let's see, really, the one other thing I wanted to add, let me make sure, is to, you know, you're gonna let some employees go, you're gonna let some things go, but the people you keep, you're gonna train hard, you know, make them better, make them soldiers. I understand that, you know, being engaged through virtual media is tough. And so, you know, have your happy hour and have your light days, right? Because this is very disheartening sometimes, and it's very hard to get through some of these days, but train them, make them the best they can ever be. So when they start again, you know, they're going to be not only your soldiers, but they're going to trust you, and it's just going to be a stronger team overall. Now's the time to do road maintenance. Now's the time to do internal maintenance. So that's kind of the message that we're giving out. And, you know, thank you for letting me share. If anybody has any questions or wants to reach us, I know we're going to share contact information. But, you know, with all the knowledge that we should be gaining and learning these days, we're going to come out of this more creative and more confident than ever before. So that's where we are. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicole. And thank you so much for all your tips and all the work you're doing at the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We will have our Q&A session coming up after our next speaker. So if you have any questions, feel free to continue writing them on the Q&A icon found at the bottom of your screen. And up next, our last and final speaker, I would like to present Paul Roldan, who will be presenting on healthy personal finances in a time of crisis.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction, Jessica. Thank you to Hispanic Heritage Foundation, and to Juana, good buddy of mine from back in Princeton University days. It's an honor and a privilege to be here speaking to a group of Latinos, and I say that because I'm passionate about this topic of finances. And I say that because, you know, as many of you, you've heard this and you probably experienced this or know someone, you know, I grew up in a poor Latino home. And so a lot of what we did was winging it. We didn't know these financial principles of investing, or, you know, what it is to have a portfolio or anything of that nature. So I've been blessed to be able to work in this area and really impact the lives of a lot of people through my personal financial planning firm and investment management firm. So I just want to take quickly a few minutes to talk about, you know, some considerations to have a healthy personal financial life. Now, it's interesting because it says healthy personal finances in a time of crisis. Obviously, we advocate to have healthy personal finances before the time of crisis so that you can better endure the time of crisis, okay? But here we are. So the good news is the behaviors don't change regardless of the crisis, but the tightening of the belt might have to. Okay, now we understand everyone is in a different place, but why is this so important? Because many of you have probably heard the statistics. You know, 80% of people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. So when these crises hit, it doesn't even take this level of crisis to be in a crisis for many people in this country. So this is why it's critical to kind of turn the tables on finances, because unfortunately in the 20 plus years I've been doing this, we see that finances control most people's lives versus people controlling their finances. Okay, so the goal of this is to actually have, and that's our first point, is have a spending plan. You know, Jen Hemphill opened the talk saying you need to have a plan. Okay, and I couldn't agree with that more. And the first part of the plan is what's called a spending plan, and she talked about this. What is everything that's coming in, and what are my bare bone necessities? What are my expenses? And the goal of doing that exercise, and I promise you, some people call that budgeting. I hate budgeting. Okay, personally, I'm a little ADHD, self-diagnosed, okay? So I don't have the patience to sit down and go line item expense and this and that, but it's such a critical discipline to be able to take control of your finances, to know you're the CEO of your finances. So the CEO of any organization needs to know how the finances are running, inclusive of your household. So have a spending plan, and again, the goal is to have positive cash flow, or in basic terms, have money left over at the end of the month, okay? Once you know that, and that means maybe cutting back a little bit extra here, not eating out as much, yes, support your local businesses, but do that within reason, okay? Once you have control of your finances, okay, then start injecting a little bit of doses of making it healthier. And one of those things that we say is making healthier is get rid of the bad money, quote unquote. And it's interesting because we live in a consumer-driven society. So most people have debt in this country, and I get it, okay? And I'm not gonna step all over Mercedes Garcia's talk, and I'm glad she said she's a technology company versus a credit card company and MasterCard, and that's great, because credit card companies get a bad rap, and yes, abuse of credit is horrible, okay? And yet most of us, because I had my first credit card in college, didn't know what that was. I was getting free credit card offers. I didn't even have a job, okay? So I got in trouble when I got into college, and I had to learn, oh, this has to be responsibly used. So to get to a healthier position, you have to try to eliminate your consumer debt. Okay, so if you have extra surplus, let's get rid of that consumer debt, credit cards, knock it out, okay? Because once you do that, that minimum payment or payment, now you have more free cash flow once you don't have that debt. So you're creating a healthier position, okay? And you know, it's funny because I'm a big follower of Warren Buffett, however you like him or not, but he says, if you're smart, you're going to make a lot of money without borrowing, quote unquote. And every year he tells people stay away from leveraging his shareholders. And the last point I want to do, if you can get to the point of positive cash flow, if you can get a point where you're not paying interest necessarily on consumerism, but rather have interest working for you, it's a question I can't avoid these days, is investing, okay? And I will disclaim, we normally encourage people, do not even start investing unless you have an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses, you've eliminated consumer debt, and you understand a little bit about investing, or get some, you know, some help in this area. But you know, right now people saying, should I invest? The market's dropping, this and that. And it's, yes, the market did drop 33% from top to bottom, okay, this year. It's already back up 20-something%. It's funny because the old adage says, buy low, sell high. And yet when things start going crazy is when people sell, okay? And then when things are going, hey, oh, let me get some of that. And they do the opposite, okay? So right now things are on sale. Again, this is not a specific recommendation. You see my disclaimer there, because every situation is different. But this could be an interesting time to start looking at a portfolio, rebalancing and investing monies if it makes sense in your particular circumstance. A lot of people ask me, what do we do with this coronavirus stimulus check? Okay, I don't know if you've gotten it yet, if you qualify, but to echo some of the words that some of the previous speakers says, you have to be responsible with it. I know a lot of people say, I've been locked up, now let's go crazy. No, you know, your finances, you're still gonna have to deal with them when we get on the other side of this. So don't let this be an opportunity to dig a deeper hole, but rather be responsible and intentional about bettering your financial health, and put yourself in a position where you control your finances versus having finances control you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Paul, for your questions and all the advice that you just gave us. We are going to be starting our Q&A session next. We have a couple minutes, and we would like to bring up a couple questions that our attendees have asked. For Jen Hemphill, how do you differentiate making a budget to having a spending plan?
It's essentially the same thing. But budgeting is such a restrictive word. And really how I see it is, whether you call it a budget or a spending plan, it's the same thing. It's a plan for your money, and it's a tool, but it doesn't stop there. It really, I see many people that they create a spending plan or a budget, and then, yes, I did it. You've got to implement it. And how you implement it is with a system. And your system, whether it's a cash envelope system or a virtual envelope system, that's the step that people miss because they think, I've got a budget, I'm good. But that's not the case. You've got a budget and you're taking that first step. Now you've got to implement it. So essentially they're the same thing.
Got it, thank you. And for Edgar Dreyer, a question from Baltasar Hernandez, an audience member. What does one do about a collections account due to unsettled medical debt?
Great question. Unfortunately, my Zoom video is not working, so you'll have to hear me out on this one. As it relates to medical, there's always special circumstances. Every case is unique because of depending on the medical case that it relies on. The best thing you could do is always talk to the creditor to see what can be forgiven at that point in time, and try to find alternative solutions. Many times there might be payment plans that you can follow through on that will give you the opportunity to pay it over time. But the first point of contact is contact your creditor to see what options they can provide.
Awesome, thank you. And another question we have is for Paul Roldan. How do I get started investing in the stock market? One of my goals during the pandemic is to get started on investing.
Very good. So again, disclaimer, make sure you have a good foundation first and you've got all the bad money out of your portfolio. Okay, so assuming you have an emergency fund, you have consumer debt, there's different ways to start. And one, I'm gonna recommend that you educate yourself, you know, financial literacy, somebody mentioned that earlier, because there's different ways, depending on how much money you have, you want to diversify. You don't want to jump into maybe one or two stocks. So there's things called mutual funds that let you diversify with a lot less money. Honestly, and this is going to sound very biased because I'm a financial advisor, okay? But I would seek the advice of, if you've never done this before, get educated first and go to a financial advisor, hopefully someone that's a fiduciary. Okay, that's a key word in our business. A fiduciary is one who has to put your interests first, and that person will teach you. There's a lot of fiduciaries or registered investment advisors that are teaching people. Our company is called All Gen, for all generations, means there's no minimums in our firm, and there's a lot of firms with their up and coming millennials that are coming up saying, hey, we're ready to not have minimums, but teach the population at large how to invest wisely. So not to avoid the question, but try not to do it yourself because it can be more painful if you do.
Got it, thank you. And our next question is there any federal program through SBA or otherwise any COVID-19 unemployment expanded benefit to help independent contractors like self-employed? Are there any valid for people that file taxes with an I-10 but is an undocumented immigrant, so not a valid social security number? If anyone can answer that question. We will be providing resources for this specific question as a follow-up. For Martin, if you get the mortgage deferral, is it then added on the back end of your loan, or is it due in full after the 90 days?
So every situation is different, and it's going to depend on your mortgage investor, and also realize that a lot of mortgage investors are still working on more details on what happens after the 90 days. But I can tell you some of the options that can occur afterwards could be adding to the end of the loan. So basically you start say you started in April, and then your next payment due is July 1st. That is a possibility. It could be possible we could help you modify the loan. So it was perhaps, or it is now, or will be unaffordable to you. So therefore, it could be a reduction in interest rate. Perhaps it could be principal forgiveness. So officially, the answer is it depends. It depends on your mortgage investor. But bottom line, call us and let us know, or call whatever bank you have. Let us know your situation, and we'll work with you.
Got it, thank you. And we have another question, and I think this is more geared to Paul. Any advice on investing apps for beginners like Robinhood or Acorn or any other app that you may be aware of?
Yeah, there's a lot of online do-it-yourselfers. And again, I know Mercedes put in there that they have an education for children and youth as well. And I think that's so important, getting educated first, read, because again, there's a lot of ins and outs and variables when investing. As far as applications, Robinhood is a strong application if you just want an easy way to get into it. Again, you're not getting any advice, but at least it's an easy way to access it. Okay, there's Betterment.com was another one that also had a way to invest easily, and you pay a fee, so you kind of get a pseudo financial advisor. So it's kind of a middle of the road, do it yourself with a little bit of guidance. Those are probably two, without hiring an advisor outright, some of the easy intro apps that are out there to get you introduced to investing. Again, disclaimer, be careful. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little bit risky, but there is access to the market these days via those different programs.
Wonderful. And thank you so much, Paul, and all our speakers for joining us today. That'll wrap up our today's Charlas on your finance, your future during COVID-19. For all other questions, we will make sure to provide an answer to them on our follow-up. We will be sharing a recording of this charla as well, including the presentations and the contact information of our speakers. Thank you all so much and have a great rest of your day and weekend.